Hey friends, it's Robin. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to do a super chill recent reads video. I need to wrap up some of the books that I've read, especially before going into June, with June being a big readathon month. I keep putting off filming this video and now it's supposed to go up in 2 days and I didn't want to get ready or anything today. I do have 10 more books to talk about that I've read pretty recently. Actually, I went on a huge streak of trying to catch up on arcs. So almost everything on this list was an arc that was sent to me in some way. First up is How You Got the Girl by Anita Kelly. This is the third and final book in this quote-unquote series. None of the books are like labeled as a series or anything like that, and you can totally read them as a standalone. Previous couples do have small features in here. This one is a female-female basketball romance. We're following a heroine who works for a university, doesn't really like her job, but she is a high school basketball coach, which she loves. And one day in walks this woman who has a kid that is new to the school, and lo and behold, it is like her college basketball idol. She's had such a big crush on her entire life, and she is completely thrown for a loop, doesn't know how to react. The two of them end up kind of coming together to coach this girl's basketball team and help each other through some stuff. One of our heroines is trying to figure out her ace and or arrow identity. She feels like all of her friends have their own identity and knowledge of their label, and she feels very confused. And she is being helped by the other heroine who is kind of taking her out on these dates and trying to figure out like what she's comfortable with and what feels right to her. The other heroine is fostering her niece while her sister goes through rehab, and our coach heroine is helping out taking care of this high school girl. I really appreciated the ace discussions and representation, how our heroine is in her, I want to say she's in her 20s, and doesn't feel like she's ever found a label that fits. And I really appreciated that representation because I think it's pretty common for people to question things as they get older. It's not just something that happens once when you're like 14. She never does settle on one exact word, and that is a pretty prevalent thing in here, that not everyone needs to have like a label to like identify themselves. So I liked all of that. This wasn't my favorite in the series. The romance didn't do a whole lot for me. So I gave this one 4 stars, which is still a really good book. Anita Kelly's books are always fantastic. It just didn't quite live up to the 5-star of Love and Other Disasters and Something Wild and Wonderful, but it was still really great. Next, I read Out of Office by H. Cunningham, which I'm pretty sure was on my 2024 most anticipated list. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite book from H. Cunningham, but it was still a really solid read. We're following this heroine who's a workaholic, works herself to the bone, and she is down in Panama helping to open up this brand new hotel. She decides that she is going to take, for the first time ever, I think it's a 2-week vacation. And while her workaholic mother is questioning her, all of her friends are like, you need to take this break. She meets this guy who is her driver while she is there for work. And on her last day of work, he finally asks her to spend her vacation at his family's like beachside hostel. And of course, when she gets there, all of the cabanas are booked and she has to stay in his house, and the two of them have this really epic vacation romance. And a lot of this book is what happens after the vacation, and I really appreciated that aspect, watching the heroine trying to figure out how to balance her life and what was actually important to her. However, I felt like the couple got together like right away, and then they were just together for the book. It was really just them working through things post-vacation, whether or not he was going to live with her, she was going to live with him, and how to balance work and make sure they're both happy with their choices. Like it didn't feel like a romance necessarily because they're just together for the whole book. And it's just you watching them figure out how to make this relationship work long term. Then I read The Stranger I Wed by Harper St. George, which is the first book in a spin-off series of her Gilded Heiress series. So this is another Regency historical romance from her. And in this one, we are following a young American woman who is like the illegitimate daughter of this like really, really wealthy guy. But when her grandmother dies, she learns that the grandmother has left a trust to her and her two sisters because she feels bad that the family never took care of the three girls. The father finds a way to essentially tie up the trusts so that they can't access them unless they get married to somebody that he approves. Since it's pretty much impossible for her to marry up in the US because of who she is and who her father is, she decides that her and her mom and her two sisters are going to go to England and they are going to marry somebody with a title. She ends up meeting a guy that also happens to need an American heiress in order to save his family's home that his father let fall to shambles, and they strike up a bargain. Of course, even though it's a marriage of convenience, they fall in love. This was almost the exact same thing as Out of Office, where this couple is together from page one. You're literally just seeing them learn each other's secrets and learn each other's history and get to know each other's family. Like, there was no plot to this book. It wasn't a bad book. I actually liked their relationship and like their chemistry and dynamic, but the book itself had no story to it. Like, there was no plot. It was just these two getting to know each other for like 350 pages. And by the end, I was just like, what was the point of this book? Then I read This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan, which I obviously gave 5 stars. Kennedy Ryan just hits differently. I talked about this a little bit in that weekly Get It All Done life update vlog that I did, but there is just something so special about the way that Kennedy Ryan writes her romances. It's this really amazing balance between the relationship and intense plot and heavy themes, and the way that she can put all of it together and not have it feel overwhelming and not have it feel like she didn't address something or take something seriously enough. Like, this book could have gone so wrong. We're following this woman whose husband is arrested right at the beginning of the book. Their marriage was already kind of on the rocks, and then he is arrested for embezzlement, and she's having to come to terms with the fact that she didn't know this guy that she spent so much of her life with. It's a semi-forbidden romance because the guy that she is falling for in here is the guy who caught her husband embezzling. It is them over quite a long period of time going through the husband's case and taking over as head of the household and trying to care for their children, and the two of them going through some grieving and personal growth and finally finding their way together. And it was beautiful. Then I read Bewitched by Laura Thalassa. This was a reread for me. I wanted to reread this so that I could go into the sequel, which I had an arc of, and I gave this 4 stars again. I think this is just a really fun fantasy romance series. Every time I talk about this, I say, like, this is not anything new. This is not bringing something new to the fantasy romance genre. It hits all of the beats of an enemies to lovers romance and a little mystery element and the heroine not knowing how to use her powers, and it's a good time. After that, I read You Should Be So Good by Kat Sebastian, which I gave 5 stars. This was a 5-star prediction for 2024, and it definitely lived up to my own hype. This is the sequel to We Could Be So Good. Again, you don't have to have read that book in order to read this one. One of the heroes in this book just happens to work for the newspaper that was in book 1. This one is following a reporter who is still dealing with a lot of grief. He is assigned to take over this baseball story because New York has gotten this new team called the Robins. They're like star player is absolutely choking and it is on this ridiculous streak of not being able to hit the ball. And so they want to write this like diary article where they interview him and write from his perspective. And they both have this really immediate attraction towards each other. But obviously at this time period, I want to say this is 1960s, it was still very dangerous to be openly queer, especially given that one of the heroes is famous. It is them. getting to know each other and working through the grief of one hero and the insecurities that the baseball player has over being traded and his reactions and how he's playing and all of these things. It is such a beautiful, sweet, amazing romance. Always really like how these end in an HEA, even though it feels like it's going to be impossible the entire time that you are reading the book. Even if you don't enjoy historical, I think that all of Cat Sebastian books are a good one to pick up because they don't read nearly as historical, and since they are set in different time periods, you are getting a lot more representation because you're not just seeing white Victorian London. Then after reading all of those ARC books, I needed a little palate cleanser. I picked up The Bastard in the Air by Eden Finley and Saxon James. I gave this 3 stars. It's definitely one of my least favorite books of theirs. It was just kind of weird. We're following this hero who is an adult at this point. He's never known his father, and when his biological father passes away, he learns who he is, and he is this multi-millionaire business owner, and he's pissed because he's like, I grew up poor with my single mom, and the whole time dad was over here with $1 billion company and gave us nothing. And when he goes to the funeral, he learns that he has 3 half-brothers. The brothers have taken over the company, and now our hero is supposed to become involved in the company as well in order to get his portion of the inheritance. Obviously, there's some strain between the brothers because none of them knew about each other, and they're worried about who is going to take over the company and all of that. And as you go, you are getting 2 of the brothers falling in love, which sounds really terrible. They're not actually brothers, which you learn as like this goes. I remember in the teaser at the bottom it was like, they're not actually brothers. Essentially, the little twist is like the person that you thought the bastard and the person who thought was the heir is actually the other one. So essentially it's like adopted brothers falling in love. It was fine. It was very dramatic and kind of odd and very insta-lovey. It was something I read. From there, I went right into Bespelled by Laura Thalassa, which was the sequel to Bewitched, and I gave this one 4 stars as well. This was such a fun sequel. We get a lot of answers in this one. It's very fast-paced. There's a lot that happens in here. It picks up right where book 1 leaves off, and this answers a lot of the unexplained questions that we had at the end of book 1, and you are also getting the history of our main characters, and you get it really early in the book, which I liked because I was so mad. Not like actually mad. The scene where book 1 leaves off is just so painful because I was like, I need those answers. And you get them right away at the beginning of this book. I really liked the romantic development between the characters. I liked their back and forth and that like line between love and hate. Like they're so mad at each other, but they're also like very much so drawn to each other. After that, I picked up Fate of the Sun King by Nisha J. Tooley, which is the 3rd book in the Artifacts of Aranos series. The first book being Trials of the Sun Queen, and I gave this one 5 stars. This was so good. I, at this point, was kind of on a fantasy romance binge because I was really enjoying my time reading Bewitched and Bespelled, and I kind of wanted to carry that momentum. And so I read this very early. I think this one comes out in July, and it was fantastic. This is another one where you get so much information in this one. One of the things that I've appreciated so much about this series is that every book so far has felt important and not like that middle book where all you're doing is planning out stuff for the final book where it's just like information dumping. Every book in this series has felt important and like necessary. I'm not going to talk about the plot of this one because spoilers, but in that first book, we're following a heroine who is in this like really, really terrible prison, and she is taken away randomly one night from this prison and dropped into the Sun Palace and kind of forced into this competition to become the Sun Queen. Lastly was Clueless Puckboy by Eden Finley and Saxon James. Again, just needed a bit of a palate cleanser after some more arcs. And I gave this one 3.5 stars. It's my least favorite of the Puck Boys series so far. I think I gave the first 2 of them 5 stars, and this one was just okay. I didn't grow very attached to the characters. The plot was, this one we're following a hero who is obviously a hockey player, and he gets injured right at the beginning of the book, and he is having a romance with the personal trainer for his team. There is a little bit of caretaking in here and them trying to figure out the forbidden aspect of their romance. And I think where this one lacked for me is it tried to go with this forbidden-y thing, but it was never forbidden. And at one point, one of the heroes even addresses it, and they were like, you know, all we need to do is go talk to HR. And I was like, yeah, why are we why are we here? Why are we doing this? Again, this book just didn't have a lot of purpose to it, because all they needed to do was set up a meeting with HR from page 18 and the book was over. It was cute, their romance was cute, the banter was cute, caretaking injury aspect was cute. It just didn't leave a lasting impact on me or anything like that. So that is it for this recent reads. If you want to know any more about these books, I'm going to have them all linked down in the description box so you can go check out the synopses and probably some better descriptions. Thank you all so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this video, I will see you in my next one. Bye.